Rachel Barber had a perfect life. Everybody loved her, or so it seemed. However, one person in Rachel's life turned love into an obsession. She was reported missing as a result of that obsession, sending her family into a state of terror. It would shock not only Rachel's friends and family, but the entire country of Australia when the truth about what happened to Rachel became public. Rachel Barber was born to Elizabeth and Michael Barber on September 12, 1983. While Rachel was still in the womb, Elizabeth placed headphones over her belly to introduce her to music. As Rachel grew up, her love of music remained with her. Growing up, Rachel and her sisters spent hours choreographing dance shows for their parents. Rachel and her sisters would make a mess during these performances, pulling out every piece of dress-up clothing and costume jewelry they owned. While the mess drove her parents crazy, they look back fondly on those days. With stunning green eyes, Rachel wasn't just talented, but also beautiful. She was once featured in an Australian health magazine. Rachel Barber's passion for dance was taken seriously by Elizabeth and Michael Barber, who allowed her to take classes at the local dance school. As a child, Rachel dreamed of becoming a professional dancer and possibly owning a studio. As an alternative to a traditional school, Rachel begged her parents to let her attend the dance factory. She could devote time to dancing and perfect her skills at the dance factory. Elizabeth and Michael wasted no time enrolling Rachel in the dance academy, where she thrived. Rachel loved attending the dance factory. She was always joyful and would dance through the halls. Rachel had many friends at the dance factory, and even a boyfriend, Emmanuel Manny Carella. Rachel started her day as she usually did on March 1st, 1999. Michael drove her to the tram station at 9:30 a.m. so she could catch the tram to Richmond. After getting off the train, Rachel planned to eat breakfast at her friend's house, as she did every morning before school. Emmanuel, his brother, and Rachel met for breakfast at her friend's house, then headed to the dance factory for class. At school that day, Rachel mentioned to one of her friends that she expected to make a lot of money by the night's end. When Rachel's friends asked how she was going to get this money, she said she was working with someone they didn't know. She promised to explain everything the next day. After lunch, Manny and Rachel went window shopping, and Rachel showed him a pair of blue shoes she liked. Rachel even brought her mother to the store to see them. She told Manny that she would buy them the next day with the money she was going to make that night. Manny asked Rachel how she planned to earn all this money, and she replied that an old friend had offered the anonymous work that would earn her a lot. After school ended for the day at 5:30 p.m., she said goodbye to Manny and headed toward the tram station. Instead of turning down the road she typically takes to get there, Rachel told her friend she was taking a tram. One of her friends offered to walk her, but Rachel declined and walked alone to the tram station. Elizabeth was cooking dinner at home on March 9th while waiting for Michael and Rachel to arrive. They usually walk through the door at 6:45 p.m., but by 7:45 p.m., neither had arrived, and Elizabeth was in a panic. When the phone rang, Elizabeth ran to answer it, hoping it was her husband or daughter. Hearing Michael's voice on the other end of the line, she breathed a sigh of relief. He told Elizabeth he was calling her from his mother's house and that Rachel never came to the tram station. Elizabeth told Michael to check another station she picked Rachel up from twice a week. However, Rachel wasn't there either. Initially, Michael and Elizabeth Barber were concerned that Rachel was lost. Despite her confidence as a dancer, the teenager was shy and reserved in real life. Rachel was unlikely to seek assistance if she got lost. Rachel's parents, Elizabeth and Michael, wanted to report her missing to the Box Hill Police Department, but officers refused to take the report. According to Box Hill police officers, teenagers running away from home was not uncommon. If Rachel didn't return within 48 hours, the officers told Elizabeth and Michael to come back and file a report. Elizabeth and Michael called Manny to find out where Rachel might be. He told her parents that Rachel had mentioned a job and making a lot of money that night. In calling Rachel's friends, Michael and Elizabeth discovered that she took a different tram than she usually would after school. People around the tram station were asked if they had seen Rachel, but no one did. Michael returned to the police station later that night, but was told it was still too early to report Rachel missing. Early the next morning, Michael and Elizabeth returned to the police station with photos of Rachel. However, they refused to begin an investigation into Rachel's disappearance. Elizabeth and Michael were so fed up with the unhelpful officers that they drove to a different police station in the town of Richmond. They tried to file a report there. Richmond officers told the parents they couldn't assist them and that they needed to return to Box Hill, where they initially reported the incident. As Michael and Elizabeth continued to search for Rachel, several of Rachel's dance factory teachers called the police station to urge them to start an official investigation. When Michael and Elizabeth searched Rachel's locker at school, they only found her wallet. Rachel's favorite shoes came to mind, and Elizabeth headed to the shop to see if the owner saw her. The shop owner said that she knew Rachel and had put the blue shoes on layaway for her. Rachel promised the shop owner she would return with the money in a few days. Elizabeth called all nearby hospitals looking for someone matching her daughter's description, but couldn't find any information because of privacy laws. Several friends and neighbors helped with the printing and distribution of flyers. According to Elizabeth and Michael, police officers advised them to focus on their daughters since Rachel seemed to have run away. Elizabeth and Michael wanted to appeal publicly to Rachel if that was the case and she ran away, but the police denied their request. When Elizabeth reported a male friend who had been acting creepy lately, the police dismissed her report. When Rachel was reported missing, the police seemed uninterested in helping them until about a week later, when there was a break in the case. A fellow dance factory classmate heard about Rachel's disappearance about a week after she disappeared. Some students at the school didn't even know Rachel was missing. The police didn't question any of her teachers or friends. She said Rachel was with a young woman when she saw her on the tram at 6:40 p.m. on March 1st. The woman and Rachel got off the tram together and appeared to know each other. Rachel seemed to be very comfortable with her. When asked to describe the person with Rachel, the student said, "I remember that Rachel looked very beautiful and that she was just amazing compared to her friend, who seemed like a simpleton." The sketch artist met with Rachel's classmate, who described the plain-looking woman she saw with Rachel, and the drawing shocked Elizabeth and Michael because they recognized the woman immediately. There was a striking resemblance between the woman in the sketch and Carolyn Reed Robertson, Rachel's old babysitter. The Barber family first met Caroline in 1992 after moving to Mont Albert. As Elizabeth and Michael became acquainted with Caroline's family, they seemed to bond. Each family had 3 daughters. Rachel had her sisters. Rachel and her sisters were babysat by Caroline, who was 5 years older than Rachel. While Rachel's family seemed almost picture perfect, Caroline's wasn't quite as idyllic. Due to her parents' divorce, she suffered from depression. Around a year after moving away in 1997, the Barber family lost contact with Caroline. Caroline approached Rachel in the fall of 1998 about modeling gigs. When Rachel spoke with Elizabeth about the offer, she declined and thought it wouldn't be a good idea. Only days before Rachel's disappearance, Caroline called her again on February 28, 1998 at 5:25 p.m. The first phone call began and lasted 15 minutes. A half hour later, Rachel and Caroline spoke again. When Rachel hung up the phone, Elizabeth remembered how excited and giddy she was. She thought she was talking to her boyfriend, Manny. She never expected it to be their old babysitter. Caroline was 19 years old at the time of Rachel's disappearance in March 1999 and worked at a telecom company in sales. Investigators noticed that Caroline called out sick on March 1st and left early on March 2nd. She had missed several shifts since then. Caroline's boss told the police that she was known for her promptness, so her missing work was out of the ordinary. On March 12th, police went to Caroline's apartment, but no one answered the door. Police spoke to Caroline's neighbors in her apartment complex, and they reported hearing loud sobbing in Caroline's bathroom in early March. Caroline's co-worker told the police that Caroline kept pestering her for money she once loaned her. The co-worker said that for some reason, Caroline desperately wanted to get her $300 loan back in early March. Caroline told the co-worker she needed the money back because she was moving furniture to her father's property and had a mover scheduled. On March 3, 1999, a moving company arrived at Caroline's apartment and helped her move a statue to her father's property. The police broke into Caroline's apartment on March 12th and found her unconscious, face down on the ground in her bedroom. Caroline had had a seizure. When Caroline awoke, she confessed to the police that she had murdered Rachel on March 1st. To persuade Rachel to return to her apartment, Caroline hatched an elaborate plan to convince her. In exchange for participating in a highly confidential psychological survey, Rachel would earn money and clothes. However, she was unable to tell her mother or boyfriend about it. Caroline, on the other hand, had other plans for Rachel. When officers searched Caroline's apartment, they found several diaries in which she expressed disturbing thoughts, including a pre-planned murder plan. One entry read, "On the way to dance school, say that she can't tell anyone that she's meeting me, as I'm not allowed to give the study results to anyone. Ethics, highly confidential. Not even your boyfriend, parents. Drug Rachel, toxic over mouth. Put the body into army bags and disfigure and dump somewhere way out. No car." After Rachel arrived at Caroline's apartment, the two ate pizza, and Caroline guided Rachel through a meditation exercise. As Caroline grabbed a telephone cord, she told Rachel to close her eyes and think happy and pleasant thoughts. With the cable, Caroline strangled Rachel. She kept Rachel's body in the closet for 2 days. Her father came over to check on her because she wasn't feeling well, and she had locked her bedroom door to keep him out. To transport Rachel's body to her father's farm, Caroline wrapped it in blankets and placed it in a duffel bag. After the movers transported Rachel's body, Caroline interred her ashes next to the grave of her dead cat. At Caroline's apartment, police found evidence that she had a severe psychological disorder and was obsessed with Rachel Barber. On one page of one notebook, Caroline drew crude self-portraits of her and wrote words like worthless, dead, and embarrassing. Bold letters read, "I hate Caroline Club President is Caroline." In Caroline's eyes, Rachel was the perfect person. She was everything Caroline was not. Caroline was obsessed with the Barber family and kept a notebook full of private information about them. Caroline's apartment was adorned with family photos of Rachel's family. After police officers discovered Rachel's body on Caroline's father's farm on March 13, 1999, Caroline was officially charged with first-degree murder. Caroline appeared in court 2 days later. She didn't enter a plea. As a matter of fact, Caroline didn't speak at all. It seemed as if she was catatonic in court. According to Caroline's defense attorney, she only remembered inviting Rachel over and bits and pieces about getting rid of her body. In January 2000, Caroline went on trial. The prosecutors argued Rachel's murder had been a premeditated one. Prosecutors presented Caroline's numerous diary entries as evidence that she wanted to kill Rachel and start a new life. Ultimately, Caroline pleaded guilty, and a trial was not held. The judge sentenced Caroline to 20 years in prison. She was eligible for parole after serving 14.5 years. During her prison sentence, Caroline turned over a new leaf, found religion, and discovered she was a lesbian. As of January 2015, Caroline was on parole and living with a girlfriend she met in prison. Elizabeth and Michael Barber have forgiven Caroline for murdering their daughter. They didn't want to live with bitterness in their hearts because they felt it wouldn't be fair to their other daughters. After Caroline was released, they pleaded with the public not to harass her. Caroline's appearance has dramatically changed since she was put behind bars in 1999, and she is no longer the plain, plump girl she used to be. The first time Elizabeth saw Caroline after her release, she chillingly said, "There is a Rachel likeness. The eyes." What do you think about the murder of Rachel Barber? How do you feel that Caroline is out on parole? What case would you like to see covered next? And as always, don't forget to hit the bell icon and subscribe.